Hello, this is Suman Butcher of AsianCultureVulture.com, and we are here in Compton Verney to see a wonderful new exhibition called Through the Lens of Masterji. Masterji was an artist called Maganbhai Patel, a young man from Gujarat who came to the UK in the early 1950s, and his interest in photography took him to begin a studio which he began in 1961, and over 50 years he documented the life of the South Asian community in Coventry. I'm about to talk to Oli McCall, the curator of the exhibition. Hello Oli, welcome to Asian Culture Vulture.
Welcome to Compton Verney.
Thank you, thank you. So, through the lens of Masterji, tell us a little bit about how this exhibition came together.
The exhibition builds on a solo show of Masterji's work, which was displayed in Coventry as part of Coventry City of Culture. And so this exhibition really builds on the selection of work that was shown in Coventry, but takes it a bit further. So we're looking at work that was produced by Masterji across his long career, which spans several decades. And with several new elements, such as oral history recordings with members of that kind of pioneering generation of South Asian people who moved to Coventry and made the city their home.
So Masterji was a young guy called Maganbhai Patel?
That's right.
Came from Bombay to Coventry, and he started taking pictures of all these Asian men who lived in Coventry in the 50s.
That's right.
Yeah, so shall we have a look at him first initially, and then some of the work?
Sure.
And you can tell us a bit more about him. So
yes,
this is him, this is the gentleman, right?
This is Masterji. So
Okay.
We've started the exhibition with two really nice self-portraits taken several decades apart. The first one is from the early 1960s, so this would have been soon after Masterji arrived in Coventry. And then the second from 2016, that portrait was taken to coincide with his first solo show in Coventry. So they really span his career. And as you say, he arrived in Coventry in 1951. He came on board a steamship called the Jal Jawahar from Mumbai, and it took sort of 20-ish days to arrive at Liverpool. He came with 5 friends, and he was already interested in photography before he came to Britain. So in India, he would borrow the camera of a friend and take pictures. So we have in the exhibition a portrait of his mother, which Masterji brought with him from India, as well as a suitcase which he brought, which contained all of his belongings.
So will you come with me and show some of the... I mean, like, how did you find him? When did you find him?
So the connection came via the team at Coventry City of Culture. So the artistic director there introduced us to Tarla Patel, Masterji's daughter, who's an artist herself, and she's the custodian of the kind of Masterji archive.
So my dad arrived in England in 1951, and he came from the South Gujarat, from a very small village in India. And he arrived by steamer. It took him 21 days, and he was headmaster or head teacher in India. And his love of photography actually started in India. He met another Indian that actually came from Africa, who had a camera, and he borrowed that camera when he was there, and he took photographs. So one of the earliest photographs that you will see in the exhibition is a photograph of his mother that he actually brought with him in a metal suitcase that came along on his journey with him. And it was very much his pride and joy having that photograph with him. And so he came to England. He, as many other migrants did, they started working in factories. He worked in a really large factory called the General Electric Company. And from there he was working nights, and he was saving up for his own camera. And he was taking photographs of friends and people that he knew. And from there, like word of mouth, people just asked him to take photographs as well.
We were just amazed by the breadth of Masterji's work, the number of images that he'd taken across his long career, and the fact that this work had really not been seen by a wide public before. You know, he was in his 90s before he received kind of public recognition with his first exhibition.
Let's walk and talk. Tell me.
So many of the works in this space are from Masterji's early career,
okay.
And you can see that in those early years in the 1950s and 60s he was inspired by sort of Hollywood glamour and the kind of black and white images of stars of the silver screen. That comes through in some of the kind of far off gazes and the rather formal positioning of the sitters.
I like his own self-portrait.
Yes, yes. So we also get a sense that he was quite playfully experimenting with his self-portraits. There are a number of self-portraits through the exhibition. This is the earliest one. This also gives us a glimpse into the space that he was working in that time. You can see this was in the front room of his house in Widdrington Road in Coventry. You can sort of see the edges of the lights there and the setup. Gives it a very theatrical feel, I think.
This is my favorite picture.
Yes.
It's like amazing, you know, like the guy with the dark glasses. I think it's Mr. and Mrs. Khan.
Mr. and Mrs. Khan. This
Yeah.
is one of the most striking and unusual portraits in the exhibition.
Yeah.
Masterji would go to people's homes to take their portraits as well as in the studio. And so he visited Mr. and Mrs. Khan in Wolverhampton. And at that time, interracial marriage in Britain would have been really quite unusual, so this portrait was commissioned to mark their marriage, and it would have been, you know, it would have attracted quite a bit of comment, I think, in sort of conservative British society at the time. But it's just so stylish and characterful.
It is.
You know, Masterji was great at capturing the personalities of the people that he photographed.
Yes. This is an early picture of Ramaben, Masterji's wife, yeah?
This is a really lovely portrait of Ramaben from the early 1960s. So she joined him in 1962 in Coventry, and you can see her here in the back garden of the house where they lived when she first moved. Really young, and she went on to become a really instrumental kind of part of the life of Master's art studio. She helped to run the business because Masterji was often out photographing weddings and other important social events. All of these are portraits of his wife Ramaben, except for the one here in the centre, which is a really lovely portrait of the couple's eldest daughter, Kokila, with her umbrella. I mean, it's just so strong, and this was one which Ramaben actually took, so she would also take pictures, and she developed her own interest in photography.
When my mother arrived, she came to a house where he was sharing with friends, but the front room was actually turned into a very basic photography studio, and his friends made a balance, people helped with the lights, and that was probably his very first stage into actually taking photographs in a more professional setting. And from there he then moved to establish his first photography studio in 1969, and he was one of the very first Indian-born Coventry photographers at that time.
The studio is still there, right, in Coventry? What's the address called?
So the studio is called Master's Art Studio, and it's still located 329 Stony Stanton Road in Coventry, and it's been based there from 1969. My brother Ravindra is the photographer for that studio, and yeah, we still take portraits and family photographs.
I think that is really quite incredibly sort of impressive.
Yes, that is me. That's a portrait taken by my dad, and what's really lovely is the studio itself was just another extension of home. It was another place that we were all familiar with. We'd all grown up with, we'd all play, and I think we were also used for a bit of when my dad was experimenting with different cameras as well, would kind of like be the props. And my mum took photographs as well, because my dad taught her, because when the business was really busy, I would say in the 80s and 90s, he was always out of the shop, and my mum then took over negotiating prices with customers, finding photographs, but also she she was taking photographs as well.
So we are in this room, right, the art studio. So this is your almost like your family, right? So how many, do you want to just talk us through how many siblings you are, and you know,
Yeah.
that's your mom in various different poses.
So I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. I'm the youngest.
Okay.
And within this picture you see my older brother and older sister.
And this one? Who's that?
So that's my older sister Kokila.
Okay.
And that's me on, so say it's another prop that we had in the studio.
Yeah.
And we had a plastic horse, and we had a tricycle, and in various pictures that you'll see vases and books and things like that. And for the men, the early photographs show that they had pens in their pockets, they had books that they held.
So they were like staged to look
Yes.
sort of smart or
Educated
whatever.
and smart, yes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they'd send those photographs home.
What does it tell you about the Asian community in Coventry? Like, is there a kind of a social history that emerges?
I think there is. I think as we move through the exhibition, we get a sense of the community really growing and putting down roots in the city. We go from the kind of young, solo, kind of single men who came over in the first instance to find work, through into this space, which I think reflects, you know, that next stage when wives, partners and children started to come over and the community started to really feel much more permanent in the city. We see much more kind of wedding photography, just charting kind of new generations growing up in the city and coming through really, and the, you know, the kind of growing success of the South Asian community within Coventry. I think that comes through strongly in this selection of wedding images. So we go from the kind of early 1970s right up through to the late 1990s here. And this wedding photography was an increasingly important part of kind of Masterji's and the studio's work.
So have anybody ever come and said, oh, that's me when I was a certain age or anything? Like people come and claim
Yeah,
their
they
images?
can spot themselves on the walls. And in fact, we, you know, in many cases, we don't know who the sitters were because the names haven't been recorded. In other cases, we do. But it would be great to think that people come and spot themselves and say, you know, that was me, and then we can put names to faces.
But I like this photo. She's wearing a fur coat. Do you think it was a real fur coat in those
I
days?
believe it was a real coat. My mum's story is that they were very connected with the family, and the family loved having their photographs taken, and they'd always come and have their photographs taken.
One thing that we would like to achieve is to kind of broaden recognition of Masterji's important place as a photographer, not just within the region, but you know, I think his work has real kind of national and international relevance. As one of the first Indian photographers to work in this country, you know, his work is really unique, and we therefore hope to kind of share it with a wider audience.